My name's Jake. I'm 35 years old, and I drive deliveries for a logistics company based out of Bakersfield. Nothing glamorous, mostly nighttime freight through California and into Nevada. You'd be surprised how lonely the road gets once you're out past Barstow, especially around midnight. I tell myself it was just another night, just another drive. But lately, every stretch of highway felt like a test I was always failing. I wasn't always a nighttime delivery driver. I used to work construction, but a busted knee and a few bad choices landed me here. And now I'm in deep. 10 grand deep, to be exact. Gambling. Every win felt like a fix. Every loss felt like the start of something worse. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about believing I could still beat the rules. And the guys I owe, they're not the kind you pay off late. So I took extra shifts, volunteered for longer routes, anything to stack up cash fast, which is how I ended up driving a load of engine parts to some warehouse in Carson City by way of Route 86, a route I'd never heard of until that night that I looked at the map the night before. Old paper, one I kept tucked in the glove box, just in case tech failed. Route 86 curved through a chunk of old forest that didn't show much activity. Still, it looked straightforward enough. Quiet roads, no traffic. I figured I'd shave off time and maybe catch a few hours sleep before unloading that I told myself it was just another road. Asphalt, trees, a few road signs. But even then, something about the shape of that road on the map, it curled like a hook, like it was meant to catch something. At first, nothing seemed weird. I drove northeast out of Bakersfield, passing scrubland and the occasional gas station glowing like a lantern in the dark, that I ate a sandwich I'd packed from home, turkey and mustard on white bread, and tried not to think about the dead hanging over me like a second shadow. The night air was dry, my windows cracked to keep me alert. Around 10:30 p.m., I pulled into one of the gas stations to top off the tank and grab a coffee. The place didn't even have a name, just a rusted sign that read service. It looked abandoned at first, one flickering light above the pump, a cracked window, weeds growing through the pavement. But inside, it was alive in a quiet, stubborn kind of way. There was a single aisle of snacks, a humming cooler, and a counter that hadn't seen a mop since Reagan was in office. Behind it sat an old man with a weathered face and one of those trucker caps that might have once been red. He looked up from a tiny black and white TV when I walked in. "Which way you headed?" he said. "Carson City," I said, "taking Route 86. His eyes narrowed. "Not after midnight, I hope." I laughed. "Is that a curfew or something?" He didn't smile. "That road's not right after dark. You hit the quarry bend and start climbing. You'll see what I mean." I poured coffee from the stained pot beside the register. "Let me guess, ghost stories?" He reached under the counter and pulled out a battered road atlas. Flipping it open, he jabbed a wrinkled finger at a thin gray line. "That stretch there used to be told back in the 50s. Guy named Granger ran it. Made a killing charging folks to cross a public road. Wouldn't let ambulances through without payment. One night, someone torched the booth with him inside." I paused. "Let me guess again." He came back. The man didn't blink. "People say he still collects. Only now he doesn't ask for coins." I tried to smile, but the way he said it made my stomach twist. There was no teasing in his voice, no wink, just a flat tone of someone telling you the weather. "What does he look like?" I asked. "Tall and thin. Wears the old uniform. Burned up bad. You can still see where the flames caught him. Scorch marks on the collar. Blood dried into the sleeves. Some say he's too tall for the booth now. Just stands there without moving, watching. Sounds like a Halloween setup." "Yeah," he said, but his voice was quiet now. "The only problem is, no one's dressing up." "Thanks for the heads up," I said, paying for my coffee. "Clock's ticking," he said as I walked out. "Past midnight. You better turn back if you hit that booth." Back in the truck, I shook it off. Just small-town creepiness. Every backwoods road had its legend. Still, I checked the clock on the dash. 11:12 p.m. Plenty of time to clear the pass before midnight. I sipped my coffee, kept one hand steady on the wheel, the other occasionally wiping the condensation off the inside of the windshield. The night had a weight to it, thick and quiet, like something holding its breath. The kind of quiet where even the road noise seemed dulled, like the truck was driving through cotton. The highway began to stretch and thin, the sparse lights of civilization fading behind me. Each mile farther felt like another thread snapping between me and the world I knew. I passed long shadows cast by telephone poles and fence lines, and the stars above looked sharper than usual, like they were leaning in to watch. I felt the quiet press into the cab, my only company the rhythmic thrum of tires on asphalt and the occasional creak of the seat beneath me. The road thinned out completely as I drove. No more lights, no more gas stations, just blacktop and trees, the headlights punching a tunnel through the dark. My GPS flickered once, then rerouted me onto a smaller side road with a green marker. Old Quarry Pass. The road didn't show on the paper map. I flipped back and forth, searching. Nothing. Just empty space, where the turn should have been. That should have been enough to warn me. The turn looked fine. Paved clean. Just empty. I tapped the GPS. It confirmed the route. ETA. 12:10 a.m. 10 minutes over. I muttered. Better make up time. I turned onto the pass. The trees closed in almost immediately, leaning like watchers over the road. My brights barely reached past the next bend. The pavement looked newly laid, too new. No cracks, no potholes, just perfect black ribbons slicing through the hills. I turned the radio knob. Nothing but static. Even the engine seemed quieter than usual. Fine. Quiet's fine. I kept driving. Then I saw it. A booth. A literal toll booth. Standing in the center of the road, like some forgotten relic. Wood frame, yellowed glass, and a faded sign that said, "Stop. Pay toll." I slowed the truck. Inside the booth stood someone. They were facing me. No movement. No sound. The booth itself looked wrong, like it had been dropped in from another time. I couldn't see the face, not really. Just the outline of a person. The kind of shape your brain doesn't want to stare at too long. It didn't move. Just waited. My stomach dropped, and the booth's arm came down that I sat there, staring at the booth, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a leftover movie prop, or some weird roadside art installation. Maybe a Halloween setup that never got taken down. But it wasn't fake. It felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. The arm across the road stayed down, like it knew I was there, and it wasn't letting me through that I reached over and flicked on my high beams. The glare hit the glass and caught on the figure inside. He didn't move, just stood there, head tilted slightly to the side, like he was listening to something far away. I leaned out the window. "Hey, what's the toll?" Still nothing. I wasn't about to get out of the truck. I threw it in reverse and backed up a few feet, thinking maybe I could drive around it. But the shoulders were narrow, hemmed in by thick trees, and a steep drop to the right. No way around. A sign on the booth's window caught my eye. Hand-painted. Red letters on a warped white board. Toll must be paid. Then I saw the tray, like the kind you'd find at a bank drive-thru. One of those old metal drawers that slides out. It extended slowly toward me, squealing on unseen rollers. Empty. Waiting. I stared at it. "Look, man, I don't have cash," I said, loud enough to carry. The figure didn't flinch. The trees rustled on both sides, but there was no wind, just the sound of leaves moving as if something brushed them from within. I glanced at the mirror. Nothing. Just black and branches. Something came over me then. The feeling that this was wrong. Very wrong. And I had to get out of there now. I did something a little crazy. I took a breath and dropped the truck into gear. The tires squealed as I pushed through the barrier. The arm cracked against the hood and snapped upward, clattering into the trees. I drove straight through, hard hammering. My rear view showed the booth shrinking behind me, bathed in pale light. A mile down, I let out the breath I'd been holding. Nothing followed. No sirens, no headlights. Just me and the empty road. I laughed. Shaky, nervous, but a laugh all the same. That MY hand still clutched the wheel like it might jump out of my grip. "Nice work, Jake," I said. "You just got scared by a Halloween prop." The road curved left, then right, then up into the hills. No signs, no exits. The GPS had frozen. Time, 12:01 a.m. Route unknown. I slapped it. Nothing. The trees grew tighter around the truck, like they were creeping inward. My headlights seemed weaker, like the darkness was swallowing the light as fast as it could push it forward. 10 minutes later, the truck sputtered. I glanced at the dash. The fuel gauge was fine. Battery light blinked once, then died. The radio cut out completely. Even the clock on the dash went dark. The headlights dimmed, flickered, then steadied again. I gripped the wheel tighter. A sound rose in the distance. Not engine noise. Not wind. It was a chime. High-pitched. Familiar. The ding of a toll bell. Then something brushed my leg. I looked down. The tray. It was inside the cab. The same metal drawer from the booth that IT had slid out from beneath the dashboard, even though there was no slot for it. The same tray. Empty. Waiting. I reached to push it back, but it didn't budge. It was locked in place, humming slightly. The cab lights flickered. The windshield fogged instantly, like someone exhaled hard against it. And in the center, words began to appear, drawn by an unseen finger. Pay. I floored it. The tray slid back under the dash with a metallic clunk. The fog on the windshield vanished. The road ahead unrolled in a blur, trees racing past. But it didn't feel like I was going anywhere. The mile markers started over. Mile 4. Mile 5. Mile 4 again. My throat went dry as I pulled over, trying to get my bearings, trying to breathe. I shut off the engine and listened. Silence. Then footsteps. Soft, scraping the pavement, getting closer. I locked the doors. The footsteps stopped just behind the truck. I didn't turn around. Instead, I shifted into drive and sped off again, pushing the truck harder than I should have. The road unspooled the same. Same bends, same trees, same faded billboard that read, "Thank you for visiting the ridge." I passed it 3 times. Each time, the letters seemed a little more twisted, like they weren't meant for tourists anymore. Each time, I felt like someone was watching from the trees, that I started checking the mirrors more often, flicking the high beams on and off like that might reveal something. It didn't. And then, just up ahead, the booth. Same one. But now it is different. The lights inside burned brighter. The figure inside looked sharper now, more real. The toll tray was already extended, waiting. I slammed on the brakes. The truck skidded to a stop, tires screeching. I sat there, chest heaving. He hadn't moved. I hadn't paid the toll. And now he wanted something else. I threw the truck into reverse and slammed the gas. Tires squealed, engine roared, but I only made it 20 feet before the lights flickered again, and the dashboard tray shot out like before. This time, there was something in it.my watch. The leather band was frayed. The cracked glass and scuffed casing were unmistakable. It was my father's old watch. I hadn't worn it in years, but I kept it in the glove box. Or at least I thought I did. I opened the glove compartment. Empty. I grabbed the watch from the tray. It was cold. Ice cold. The second hand spun wildly, faster and faster, then stopped. The watch let out a tiny click and shattered in my hands. The windshield fogged again. This time, something new scrawled on the glass. Toll taken. I wiped it away with my sleeve, heart pounding. The road ahead was still there. So was the booth. But now the toll man was outside. He stood to the left of the booth, motionless, arms at his sides. His cap was pulled low, shadowing his face. I couldn't see much, just a glimpse of skin, burned and twisted, peeking from beneath the brim. He didn't move. I drove around him slowly, keeping one eye on the figure. For a while, nothing happened. The road unrolled endlessly, mile markers glitching again. I saw the same broken guardrail 3 separate times. I passed a single shoe lying in the road, a children's shoe. Later, a dented tricycle with one wheel slowly spinning. Then the temperature dropped. I could see my breath in the cab. The truck began to rattle, like something was crawling across the roof. Bang, bang, bang. 3 knocks. Precise. Measured. I hit the brakes and stepped out, scanning the roof with a flashlight. Nothing. I circled the truck. Empty road. Trees silent. Even the engine ticked softly as it cooled as a low breeze cut through the trees and carried with it something I couldn't place, something metallic and scorched. When I climbed back in, the tray was back. This time, something else was missing. My pinky nail. Gone. No blood. No pain. Just gone. Like it was never there. I stared at my hand, heart racing. What do you want? I shouted. The cab light flickered. The radio hissed to life. For a split second, a voice came through. Pay. Then silence. I started driving again, faster now. Headlights slicing through the trees. Every turn looked the same. Every shadow felt alive. The trees pressed tighter, as if trying to herd me forward. The steering wheel trembled under my hands like it was alive. I passed a road sign that read, "Debt must be settled," in standard highway font. Then it was gone when I looked back. The darkness started pressing on the windows like fog, dense and heavy. Something whispered my name. Not through the radio. Not in my head. From the back seat. I didn't look. I didn't speak. I just kept driving. Suddenly, a new light appeared ahead. Not the booth. A cabin. Small, 1-story. Porch light flickering. I slammed the brakes and coasted to a stop. I ran up and knocked. Then banged. Hello? Please, something's wrong. I need help. The door creaked open. Inside stood a woman in her 70s, wrapped in a shawl, eyes wide. "You didn't pay, did you?" she said. "You know about this?" She nodded. "He comes for those who take without giving." "What does he want?" I asked. Her gaze dropped to my hand. "Something you value. And if you don't offer it, he'll take what he likes." I looked around the cabin. Sparse. Dusty. The air smelled like cedar and mildew. A fireplace full of ash at a rocking chair worn down to splinters. Crossbeams overhead were cracked, and wind whistled through missing panes. She pointed to the mantel. A photo sat there, her, decades younger, beside a man in a toll booth uniform. "That's him," I said. She nodded. "My husband. He worked that booth for 40 years. Wasn't a bad man, just too proud. Wouldn't let an ambulance through one winter storm. The boy inside died. Someone lit the booth on fire with him inside. Now he thinks it's still his job. Still collects. What do I do?" She handed me something small. A token. Rusted. Round. But it had weight. Real weight. I turned it over in my fingers. It wasn't just stamp metal. The surface shimmered faintly, like something burned just beneath it. On one side. It read, "One pass. No return." The other side bore an unfamiliar emblem, what looked like a road twisting into an eye. "You could probably sell this to a collector," I muttered, half joking. "Looks antique." "You could," she said, "but it wouldn't be yours anymore." That stuck with me more than it should have. As I stepped out, I turned back. The cabin was gone. Behind me, only trees. And ahead, the booth again brighter than ever. The toll man stood in the center of the road, waiting. And this time, I had something to give. I stood there, halfway between the truck and the booth, the token clutched in my hand. The rust had flaked off on my palm. The words, "One pass," "No return," felt heavier than they looked. The toll man didn't move. But something held me back. Something in the way he stared, unblinking, like he already knew what I'd give. Like he was just waiting to see if I'd try to cheat him. I looked at the token again. I turned it over in my fingers. What was it worth, really? A chunk of corroded metal? No, it was more than that. It had a strange shimmer in the light. The emblem on the back, a coiled road, forming a single eye, felt deliberate, designed. I'd seen antique dealers pay hundreds for less. I could pawn this, pay off half my debt in one sale, get ahead for once, but it wasn't mine. Not truly. The old woman had handed it over like it cost her something. She'd said it plain. What I gave had to be mine. Not borrowed. Not meaningless. That part stuck with me. What was mine? Dead sure. Regret. Anger. Memories I didn't want anymore. But those weren't tangible. I didn't want to give something real. I hesitated. Then, quietly, I pocketed the token. I reached into the glove box and pulled out a handful of coins. Spare change. Quarters, dimes. Tokens from truck stops and old vending machines. I dropped them into the tray. They sat there, shining under the flickering light. The tray didn't retract. Instead, it began to shake. Slow at first, then faster. The coins rattled like teeth. The windshield fogged instantly. Words carved into the condensation. No cheating. The headlights shut off. The engine died. The temperature plummeted. I tried the ignition. Nothing. The truck was dead. My breath came out in clouds. Frost edged across the inside of the windshield like veins. Then the dashboard screen flickered to life. Not GPS. Not radio. Just a single word pulsing in yellow text. Pay. The screen buzzed with static, and for a second, the smell of scorched air filled the cab, sharp and unmistakable. I gripped the wheel tighter. Whatever this thing was, it didn't want excuses. It wanted payment. The tray slammed shut, sending the coins flying. When it extended again, something else was inside. My wedding ring. I hadn't worn it in years. My ex-wife gave it back in a padded envelope after the divorce. I kept it buried in a sock drawer. But there it was, sitting in the tray like it had been waiting its turn. The toll man's head tilted slightly, like he was listening. The shadows hid most of his face, but the bit I could see, scarred, blistered, didn't look alive. I didn't remember putting the ring in the truck. It didn't matter. I took it. I held it in my palm. It was cold, heavier than I remembered. I remembered what she said that night before she left. You always pick the road that looks easy. And now here I was, again, staring down a toll I didn't want to pay. All those years I avoided the hard choices, left things unresolved, let people go because it was easier than changing. Cheating the toll felt like second nature to me. But here, now, there was no bluffing. I closed my eyes and slid the ring back into the tray. It disappeared. The tray retracted. The lights above the booth flared, then dimmed, but the toll man didn't move. The dashboard lit up again. A new word blinking in pale yellow text. Almost. A low sound vibrated through the cab. Not an engine. Not wind. A groan, like a door opening beneath the earth. Then the booth's arm rose slowly, creaking like a coffin lid. I didn't wait. I drove through. The trees swallowed the truck. Behind me, the light from the booth flickered once, then vanished. The trees tightened like a throat around the road. I gripped the wheel, my foot trembling on the gas. The truck rumbled forward, but everything outside looked wrong. Too quiet, too still, like the world had stopped rotating. I checked the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that burned figure step out from the dark. But there was nothing. No booth, no lights, no toll man. And yet, the sense of him hadn't left. It clung to me like the cold, unseen but pressing. The dashboard screen pulsed softly, casting the cab in that pale yellow glow. One word blinked over and over, almost. I drove because it was the only thing I knew to do, because stopping felt worse. I followed the endless road as it twisted through the night, past trees that grew sparse and brittle, their limbs stretched like arms, brittle fingers scratching at the air. The GPS was still frozen. The clock on the dash flashed gibberish. Around me, the scenery began to change. Stone walls and collapsed fencing lined the roadside. Old mile markers, broken and toppled. I passed rusted signs eaten away by time, their messages lost to rot. Then just ahead a glow. Another light, soft and gray. It wasn't the booth. It was something else. A barn, slumped and weathered, sitting crooked beside the road, like an old man resting his last mile. The truck sputtered and slowed on its own, rolling gently to a stop in front of it. I stepped out, every nerve stretched tight. Before I even reached for it, the barn door creaked open. My flashlight cut through the dark and revealed rows of forgotten toll equipment. Metal signs, broken lights, old coin trays, all scattered and rusted, like the ghosts of a highway long gone. At the far end, something waited. A second booth. It looked older than anything I'd seen that night. No windows, no roof light, just wood and metal warped by time. That felt less like a structure and more like something that had grown there. As I stepped closer, the tray slid out with a sound that didn't match its age. It didn't creak or squeal. It scraped, slow and steady, like it had done this forever. It was empty, waiting. I reached for the token. I held it in my hand for a long time. It looked different now. darker, warped around the edges. I turned it over, but the words were gone. Just a blank circle, like it had forgotten its own purpose. I set it in the tray. Nothing happened. I added my wallet, my keys, my father's lighter. Still nothing. I looked down at the last thing I had, my watch. It was running again, ticking steady. I remembered the last time it ticked like this. Hospital room. My dad was asleep beside me. I never wore it again after that day. I took it off. As I placed it in the tray, a cold breath passed through the booth. The tray didn't retract. It sank slowly, like it was being pulled into something deeper than the box could hold. And then it was gone. No sound, no shift, just absence. I stood there, waiting for something, anything to happen. But there was no voice, no message, just the barn doors creaking open behind me, and the sound of crickets waiting outside. The road was open again, so I drove. The tires hummed on the road, like a lullaby I hadn't heard in years. I didn't touch the radio, and I didn't need to. The silence was finally just silence. Not a threat, not a warning, just empty air. The road ahead was unspooled like ribbon. I followed its curves, waiting for the next horror to rise from the shadows. But the shadows held still. No booth, no mask, no tray. The trees thinned and gave way to fences. Street signs began to look familiar, not twisted or corrupted, but normal, real. One of them even read Carson City, 18 miles. I almost cried when I saw it. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, lighting up with a signal for the first time in hours. My messages are loaded. The GPS map blinked alive. I pulled over just to stare at the screen, to make sure it was real that IT was. Back on the road, the world felt sharper, cleaner. The tension that had crushed my ribs for miles began to lift. I breathed deep and let it fill every part of me. Even the air felt lighter, crisp, like the weight pressing down on my shoulders had finally slipped away. And then, just before the city limits, I saw at the booth. It wasn't on the road. It was off to the side in a field, half sunk in the dirt like a relic from a forgotten time. Cracked glass, sagging roof, and beside it, a wooden post with the faded sign. Thank you for visiting the ridge. It was dead, just a husk. Vines had begun to grow around the corners. Grass pushed up through the floor. The tray was rusted in place, unmoving. A scrap of fabric lay inside, charred, maybe part of his uniform, still faintly smoking. I drove past it without slowing down. I made the delivery just after 1:30 a.m. The warehouse foreman barely looked at me. He signed the form with a tired grunt, then vanished into the building. I didn't care till I got back in the truck and just sat there, fingers still wrapped tight around the wheel. The dashboard was quiet. The tray beneath it was gone. Gone like it had never been there. I stared at my hands. The pinky nail was still missing. I went home the next morning, slept a full day. When I woke up, I called the guy I owed and told him I'd have his money within the week. Then I picked up 2 extra routes, both far from the mountains. I didn't care where they sent me, as long as the roads were well lit and the names were ones I knew. I stopped playing cards, canceled the online bets, gave away the poker set I kept under the bed. I never saw the old man at the gas station again. The place was boarded up when I passed a week later. Dust on the pump, a chain across the doors. IT looked like it had been closed for years. Sometimes, when I drive late in the night, it's just a little too quiet. I glance at the rear view. Every now and then, just for a second, I think I see a flicker of light in the trees. Just movement, like someone standing still, cap low, watching. But it never lasts that I won't stop. I don't look back. And I never take shortcuts anymore.